Hey guys, Defect here, and today I would like to showcase my Fire Cyclone Berserker guide, currently level 83 in the Breach Hardcore League. So before jumping into the guide, I just want to clear this up. As I was editing this build guide, my roommate told me Mathil had made a similar guide and posted a video about it. Mathil's build is much more damage oriented, playing the Raider class, so if you're playing softcore, I would suggest that you check out his recent build guide video. I thought of this build when I saw the Nagamahu's axe and thought the Berserker would make a great hardcore choice and possibly uber lap farmer. Lastly, Mathil's video explains a lot regarding the axe and how it works with the fire pen, the molten burst and all that, so instead of wasting your time with that, check out his video on that topic. So, to get you warmed up a little bit, let's go through a list of the pros and cons for this particular build. It's a true melee build as you're running Cyclone. It is very tanky, currently with 8 endurance charges. It's got a fast clear speed to it. So far I've tested the build to tier 10 and that's without any signs of slowing down whatsoever. It's got a great single target. I would say it's comparable with most tier 1 builds right now. It's pretty cheap to get started and it does not require a 6-link to make it work. So for the cons, well, first of all it's a live build, so really hard hits can be an issue. So far at 83 I haven't encountered anything that could kill me yet, but I'm sure at some point it will happen. It's got an issue with reflect maps obviously because we're not running wall packed. It's a little expensive for late game if you want all the really good uniques for this build, which I'm gonna explain a little bit later. And last but not least, volatile mobs obviously can be a real bitch. So please just remove those. GGG. So the only must-have unique for this build is the Nagamahu's Flame Abyssal Axe, which basically converts 50% of your physical damage to fire damage. It also gives you 20% fire penetration and grants you a 20% chance to attack with Molten Burst on hit. This is where the real damage comes from. The Molten Burst attack is affected by all support gems socketed in the axe, regardless of links. So don't bother fusing this item. All you need is a 6 socket and you're good to go for late game. So regarding the sockets in the axe, I would suggest using greater multiple projectiles, added fire damage, concentrated effect, weapon elemental damage, life gain on hit, and lastly, fire penetration. So for the Cyclone setup, I would suggest using Fortify, increased area of effect, faster attacks, weapon elemental damage, and for the 6th link I would suggest using fire penetration. It's not really needed, neither is the 5th link to be honest. Weapon elemental damage is a great damage boost to your Cyclone itself, but you will do just fine on a 4 link, with faster attacks obviously to trigger the Molten Burst. So the build is running 2 auras, Arctic Armor, which is a nice defensive aura to have, less physical damage and less fire damage taken, and also Grace, which is basically just flat armor increase with the Iron Reflexes node from the tree, which I will explain in a little bit. Apart from the auras, another vital defense for this build is the 8 endurance charges, with Comb's Way Coil Ring giving you +1 to maximum endurance charges as well as some really lovely life regen. Let's take a look at the passive tree. The build is using 4 major keystones, including Resolute Technique, giving you 100% hit chance, Iron Grip, which is a really great damage increase to the Molten Burst projectiles, Iron Reflexes converting all evasion rating to armor, and lastly Point Blank, which is another great damage increase for the Molten Burst projectiles. So for the Berserker ascendancies, I went with Pain Reaver for the life and mana leech. Secondly, I picked up the Crave the Slaughter, which is 25% increased attack speed if you've been hit recently, and 15% increased movement speed if you haven't been hit recently, which really benefits the clear speed of the build. Lastly, I took Aspect of Carnage, which is 10% increased damage taken but also 40% more damage. For the last point, I would probably go for Warbringer, just for the increased Warcry duration and also increased Warcry cooldown recovery speed, which is really great when you want to keep up your endurance charges. For late game, I would suggest getting the Soft's Blood Amber Amulet, granting 10% maximum life, 10% increased strength, 10% fire penetration, as well as the Avatar Fire Keystone, converting all your damage to fire. Lastly, the bonus of covering enemies in ash when they hit you, slowing down their movement speed by 20% and making them take 20% extra fire damage. Granted that the Soft's Blood Amulet converts all your damage to fire, elemental reflect mobs can hurt quite a bit. I would therefore suggest getting the Sibyl's Lament Coil Ring, as equipping this in the left ring slot makes you take 30% reduced reflected elemental damage. On top of that, it's a sweet damage increase. Last but not least, Devoto's Devotion is a great choice of helmet with the high armor evasion, chaos resistance, 16% attack speed, and 20% movement speed, which is really beneficial to both your damage output and clear speed. Regarding your flask setup, I suggest going with a Basalt Flask for the 20% additional physical damage reduction, and a Ruby Flask for when encountering reflect mobs. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I will post the link to the tree in the description, and if you have any questions regarding the build, feel very free to ask me in the comment section below, on Reddit, or catch me at twitch.tv/defect_TV.
Sister,
Thanks a lot.
Drama.